shelters, ensuring that life-saving assistance and relief supplies can reach communities swiftly. This recovery effort is a testament to the determination and discipline of our technical teams and the spirit of Jamaican partnership. The NAA has deployed 14 parish-level technical field teams supported by engineers and administrative staff and working hand in glove with the Jamaica Public Service, National Water Commission, ODPEM, and the security forces. We have also activated the full capacity of Jamaica's contracting ecosystem. Major contractors, including our Spark project partners, Czech, and local road maintenance firms are assisting with heavy equipment. The private sector has stepped up. Bauxite companies, housing developers, and other equipment owners have volunteered machinery and operating time. I want to thank them. Community members armed with chainsaws and machetes have joined the effort, and we express our gratitude for their assistance in clearing some of our roads. This is the Jamaican spirit at work. Simultaneously, technical teams are assessing bridges, river training structures, retaining walls, coastal revetments, gully systems, including the Sandy Gully and the north and south coast gullies, and the national traffic signal network. Once access is restored across all affected communities, we will transition from emergency access to full road rehabilitation, including surface reconstruction where roads have been washed out or undermined. Restoring drivability on major corridors and designing long-term resilient solutions will form a core part of our national reconstruction plan. Madam Speaker, on housing and shelter, Melissa has caused extensive damage to the nation's housing stock, particularly in western parishes. Leveraging the national geospatial intelligence capacity, the government has, for the first time in our history, executed a rapid, high-resolution national housing damage assessment. This effort, coordinated through the National Spatial Data Management Branch and supported by international technology partners, analyzed more than 428,000 buildings across Jamaica. Satellite data and drone verification indicate that approximately 116,000 structures sustain severe or catastrophic damage, concentrated in Westmoreland, St. Elizabeth, and Manchester. These findings are now guiding targeted relief and reconstruction planning across communities. This is a big change, Madam Speaker. In Beryl, we didn't have this capacity, but we have since invested in, and we are now able to have more definitive and scientifically driven data as to the extent of the damage. This now will help us in budgeting, and it will help us in allocating resources. Madam Speaker, we are now transitioning from emergency sheltering to stabilization and repair. The ministry is conducting field verification in priority communities with housing support teams working alongside the JDF, ODPEM, and local authorities. As access is restored to additional communities in the West, we will complete our beneficiary verification, accelerate roofing support, and deploy building materials, tarpaulins, and rapid repair kits to ensure safety for and habitation for our citizens. The data now being integrated into the post-disaster needs assessment will shape a resilient housing and building recovery program. Minister Montague has been asked to lead the process of determining the kinds of housing solutions and how they will be deployed, because we have to utilize new building technologies. including prefabricated and containerized solutions to deploy rapidly. And so we are examining those options to see what is available that can be rapidly deployed. Minister Montague has been tasked to spearhead that program, and he has already convened a technical working group to ensure that when we actually get out to give houses, which is very soon, we have solutions that match the problem, but solutions that are easy to deploy and cost effective. With regard to electricity, restoration of power is proceeding in phases, prioritizing hospitals, water plants, communication backbones, and dense residential zones. The all clear for restoration of utility services enable JPS and independent contractors to enter the field at scale, while the Ministry with responsibility for energy is coordinating grid stabilization and resolving localized issues such as low voltage and restored feeders. Yesterday, the JPS would have given an update on the status of electricity restoration. The government has given them strategic direction to make a priority to restore large commercial and urban centers in addition to critical public facilities. Moreover, they have been tasked in their grid restoration efforts to explore relocating, where feasible, the grid underground. We have given them directives regarding Montego Bay, the Elegant Corridor, and the Hip Strip would be two areas where focus should be given to put the grid underground. If other areas are feasible, going underground is expensive. So we have to balance between expense and getting the grid up. But if we are getting the grid up and we can get some resilience in it, then we have to get the resilience in. So we will balance as we can, but it wouldn't be possible for all the grid that we have to put back up to put it underground. But in areas where it makes strategic sense, then we are encouraging them and indeed directing them to ensure that that is done. We will continue to update the country on a parish-by-parish basis on re-energization percentages as the network is repaired and rebuilt. Quick word on Petrojam. Petrojam has maintained fuel supply continuity despite flooding at its Montego Bay terminal. The cleanup is complete and structural and electrical assessments are underway before resuming western loading. In the interim, all tanker loading is being conducted through Kingston with extended operating hours to ensure uninterrupted national fuel availability. In terms of water, Madam Speaker, Hurricane Melissa has significantly disrupted water supply across the country, with the operational capacity of the National Water Commission deeply affected by power outages, blocked intakes, turbidity, landslides, and damage to electromechanical systems. Several key NWC offices, including those in Mandeville, Santa Cruz, Bogue, Falmouth, and Morant Bay, have been forced to close due to flooding, structural damage, and loss of access, while others continue to operate under constrained conditions. In total, more than 631 water systems were initially affected island-wide, with western parishes experiencing the most severe disruption as electricity supply remains limited. Supply restoration has been heavily reliant on generator power, where grid access remains unavailable, which means intermittent service in some areas. Even so, progress continues. Approximately 66% of NWC customers now have supply restored, with St. Catherine, St. Thomas achieving restoration rates above 87% and 84% respectively. The NWC has deployed approximately 40 generators to potable water facilities and 8 to wastewater plants. and has supplemented this capacity through private rental arrangements to stabilize service delivery. Madam Speaker, you'll recall that in Beryl, we weren't able to have this level of water restoration, primarily because we didn't have backup power for NWC. We learned the lesson, and we started to, one, a program to have all our major water supply have independent backup, and that is being worked on. But in the interim, we secured backup generation capacity, for which we are now benefiting from, Madam Speaker. The Minister of Water will give you more details on the recovery. But, Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to inform this Honourable House and the people of Jamaica that all members of Parliament will be allocated the following sums for the trucking of water. $2 million to the following constituencies most affected by the hurricane: Westmoreland, Hanover, St. James, St. Elizabeth, Manchester, and Trelawney. $1.5 million to selected constituencies in the following parishes: St. Catherine, St. Andrew, Clarendon, and St. Anne. Funds will be we will allocate some other funding, which the Minister will explain. But, Madam Speaker, we have $1 million to constituencies in the following parishes: in Clarendon, in St. Anne, and in St. Catherine, to certain constituencies. And I won't call out these names, but the Minister, well, there's $1.5 for some constituencies in St. Catherine, in St. Andrew, Clarendon, and St. Anne, because they are particularly affected. I don't want to go through the detail of calling out each constituency, but $1 million for others. In terms of telecommunications, Madam Speaker, after the all clear, utility crews mounted full field activities with cross-sector coordination to restore poles, repair fiber and power cell sites. Public Wi-Fi nodes and critical government communications are being prioritized in affected town centers. To restore nationwide connectivity, 600 Starlink terminals are being deployed to first responders, government facilities, NGOs, members of Parliament, and councillors. Now, Madam Speaker, not all members of Parliament have been provided with Starlink capabilities, but certainly those who are critically affected, like the member from Eastern Westmoreland and Central Westmoreland, and but the affected parishes have been provided. Flow and Digicel continue rapid recovery, with up to 86% service restoration reported in some categories. Additional spectrum was allocated to carriers to accelerate repairs. The government will also deploy roving mobile teams, which is an important service. The government will deploy roving mobile teams with Starlink connectivity and charging stations to affected communities and urban spaces to allow residents to make contact with loved ones or make short, urgent calls. In terms of public transportation, the Jamaica Urban Transit Company infrastructure and fleet remains mostly intact, with only minor structural damage and limited operational disruption reported. The Portmore Depot experienced minor damage to the perimeter wall and electrical systems. Spanish Town saw minimal impact, and Rockford had minor ceiling damage. The Montego Bay Depot had significant infrastructure damage, with 4 buses sustaining severe damage. Fuel dispensing has been altered as electric pumps are inoperable, and the depot has no generator. 10 buses from the Montego Bay fleet can be mobilized once minimal power is restored to the facility. Additionally, some drivers are marooned in their communities due to blocked access roads and poor communications. Now, despite infrastructure damage, air navigation services have been fully restored nationwide. Radar and air-to-ground communication have been re-established with support from Airtel. A 24/7 landing permit operation is in effect for humanitarian flights, and monitoring of unmanned aircraft, drones, is being strengthened to protect aviation safety. All airports reopened within 48 hours of the storm. Relief flights began on October 29th, and commercial passenger services resumed on October 30th. From October 29th to November 2, airports processed 350 flights, including 162 commercial flights and 117 relief and military missions. Domestic air drones, including Negril and Tinson Pen, are also operational. I want to spend a little bit of time on public health and our mental health response. Madam Speaker, the health system has been tested in an extraordinary way by Hurricane Melissa. Even before landfall, the Ministry of Health and Wellness activated its Health Emergency Operations Center and deployed response teams across all regions. Hospitals transitioned to emergency-only services, and health centers remained open to support communities until safe conditions emerged. These early preparedness allowed the health sector to move quickly into its emergency response posture once the storm passed. The hurricane has caused severe damage to several major health facilities, particularly across western parishes. The Black River Hospital in St. Elizabeth, our type C hospital in that parish, suffered catastrophic roof loss, structural failure, and complete utility disruption, requiring the evacuation of 71 patients to Mandeville and Maypen. Falmouth, the Falmouth Hospital in Trelawney, lost most of its roofing and suffered extensive flooding, compromising electrical systems and diagnostic and clinical equipment. The Cornwall Regional Hospital, our key Type A facility in Western Jamaica, lost more than half of its effective capacity, including severe damage to temporary wards and the Accident and Emergency Department. Noel Holmes Hospital and the Savlon Lamar Hospital similarly sustained serious roof and water damage, with power and water outages affecting patient services. These facilities are currently providing limited emergency services while staff continue rapid discharge where clinically safe and access to equipment integrity is needed. In primary care, the picture reflects a scale of national disruption. In the southeast of Jamaica, approximately 2/3 of facilities, and in the southern regions, 2/3 of facilities, are expected to have full operations within days. In the western region, where the impact was more severe, we expect a longer time for recovery for our primary healthcare systems. Several health centers have suffered significant structural damage, and temporary clinical spaces are being arranged to ensure continuity of care, especially for maternal health, chronic disease management, and child health services. To stabilize service delivery, the ministry will establish temporary field hospitals in the hardest hit parishes. These will provide emergency, inpatient, and outpatient capacity while permanent facilities are repaired. The ministry is also mobilizing medical supplies, pharmaceuticals, oxygen, and essential equipment to critical sites while conducting urgent testing and certification of hospital equipment to ensure safe reuse. Beyond clinical services, we are aggressively addressing post-disaster public health risks. Flooding, stagnant water, and sanitation disruption create favorable conditions for mosquito breeding and the spread of waterborne and vector-borne diseases. Public health teams are deploying enhanced vector control operations, including larvicide distribution to 120 households. A fogging campaign is being mounted now, Madam Speaker, with the support of private contractors and expanded field staff. Water quality monitoring is being intensified at all treatment plants with chlorination and turbidity testing to protect the population from gastroenteritis and hepatitis A and other water-related illnesses. Food safety teams are inspecting facilities and supervising safe disposal of spoiled food and livestock carcasses. Sanitation and other management operations are being strengthened to protect communities and reduce disease transmission. Madam Speaker, beyond the physical destruction and the economic disruption, the toll of Hurricane Melissa on the hearts and minds of our people has been profound. Families huddled together as winds howled and floodwaters rose. Parents worked desperately to shield their children from fear. Elderly Jamaicans, some recalling storms of decades past, relived deep anxieties as they once again face nature's fury. Many of our brothers and sisters have endured the unimaginable, the loss of loved ones, the loss of homes built over a lifetime, and the loss of lives and livelihoods that sustained entire families. There are thousands who, even now, are sleeping in shelters or with relatives, searching for stability in a world abruptly turned upside down. Therefore, Madam Speaker, the state must also address the emotional and psychological burden of the disaster. And by the way, Madam Speaker, it would not only affect our constituents, even members inside here are impacted. And I saw the grief palpably expressed by the member from Southern St. James. It is the impact of the hurricane, Madam Speaker, especially for our children. For many of them, they cannot come to grips with what has happened, to the disruption of their lives going to school, to the loss of people in their community, just the disruption in their regular meals. They are trying to come to grips with that. And with the hurricane also comes a break in order. Not having meeting with their friends and going to school, being cut off, not being able to communicate, all of those have severe mental health impact. And as I visited the Falmouth Hospital, Madam Speaker, that was an issue raised, and I was quite surprised that it was, by someone who was at the hospital, who was brave enough to say, I am a mental health patient, and it was very important that I got the services here, but we need more mental health services because our people are reacting to this crisis in ways that are becoming antisocial. And therefore, we must pay attention. I want to give the nation the commitment that the Ministry of Health is augmenting its psychosocial and mental health operations as it also seeks to mount its conventional health response. And now is a good time, Madam Speaker, to call for volunteers who are trained in this regard to reach out to the Ministry of Health, because we simply would not have enough trained professionals on staff to mount the kinds of response that would be necessary. Madam Speaker, I now turn to the education system. Assessments are still underway, but we already know that many schools, especially in the western parishes, have been severely damaged or destroyed, and others across the island have also been affected. At present, 446 schools serving nearly 150,000 students face major disruption. We have all seen the images: roofs lost, classrooms flooded, learning tools destroyed. Many schools also face extended outages of electricity, water, and internet. The situation in the western parishes is particularly grave and poses a real risk of significant learning loss. Our children need their classrooms and the structure they provide. Every day out of school is a day of lost opportunity. Yet, Madam Speaker, we must also be pragmatic. The doors of many schools cannot reopen immediately. So while we move with urgency to repair and rebuild, we must act now to resume learning through innovative and flexible arrangements so that no child is left behind. After Hurricane Beryl, we responded swiftly, aided by the timing of the summer break. This time, we must move even faster as Hurricane Melissa offers no such reprieve. Our focus will therefore be on three clear priorities: safe reopening where facilities permit, continuity of learning through blended, remote, and alternative sites where needed, and accelerated reconstruction to return schools to permanent classrooms, to return students to permanent classrooms as soon as possible. Madam Speaker, we successfully navigated the education system through the global pandemic and the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl. We will do so once again. We will get our children learning safely, swiftly, and in stronger, smarter schools than before. At the peak of the emergency, Madam Speaker, approximately 15,000 Jamaicans were accommodated in official shelters. Shelters will remain open as long as needed, with food, water, medical support, and psychological services will be provided through the Ministry of Labour and Social Security and the Ministry of Local Government. Madam Speaker, specifically in relation to marooned communities, of which there are likely in excess of 30 marooned communities, the JDF is in the process, or has already established, 22 humanitarian assistance and disaster relief outposts in the following areas: in St. Elizabeth, Burnt Savannah, Newmarket, Springfield, Burnt Savannah. But there's an error on my presentation, nevertheless, because they have Savannah Lamar under St. Elizabeth, which of course that's Westmoreland. So that was the error. In Westmoreland, Sav, Darliston, Lennox, Bigwood, Bluefields, Betheltown, Amity, Beeson Spring, Thatch Valley, Frome, Roaring River, Content, Glenbrook, Reno, Catadupa. I hope I've gotten all those names correctly. And all the members. Catadupa is St. James, South St. James. And in Trelawney, Cambridge, South St. James again. Adelphi is you. Adelphi is East Central. Well, they tagged the parishes incorrectly. Maroon Town, where is Wire Fence? South Trelawney, Jackson Town, Falmouth, and Perth. So these are all the communities. I hope the members of Parliament would have noted the establishment of these. They will be establishing more outposts as they are able to stand them up. And the objective is that these will serve as humanitarian bases in what they call a hub and spoke operation. So right now, they were moving humanitarian aid through airlift and other means directly to the various communities. Now the phase that they are transitioning into is to move it to the hub, where they can store a lot, they can do 24-hour movement, and then from the hub to all the communities, including communities that are marooned. That way we can scale up rapidly the response to communities that have not yet been serviced. A lot of this is Westmoreland. A lot of what we have said is Westmoreland. Madam Speaker, just quickly on security and order response. The national security architecture for the country has been fully mobilized in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa. From the earliest moments of this disaster, the Jamaica Defense Force and the Jamaica Constabulary Force have stood at the front line of our national response, upholding order, saving lives, and ensuring that essential relief reaches our people. Their efforts have been heroic, and the nation owes them deep gratitude. The Jamaica Defense Force moved with urgency immediately after the storm's passage. Within hours, troops established a forward disaster relief site at the Luana Community Center near Black River and began clearing block routes, many on foot, to ensure ambulances, utility crews, and relief agencies could reach our most vulnerable communities. Madam Speaker, I think here I should give you and the nation first-hand experience. Madam Speaker, the day immediately after the hurricane's passage, I asked the JDF to facilitate an aerial tour, but I sent my forward team to meet me in Black River. When we landed in Black River, having circled 3 or 4 times to find an appropriate landing site and getting communications, we recognized that the team that we sent could not pass through Holland Bamboo. It was totally blocked. And the JDF, along with residents, came out and they started work. When I returned from that tour, I went to Sav and other areas, went back home. I got a call from one of the officers in charge saying that they were cutting their way up to 4 a.m. the following morning. The entire stretch was blocked. It was compounded because there were vehicles trying to get in, blocking the convoys, and it was chaos, but they managed. And it is good that we have a reserve of logistics capabilities and an engineering and operational force like the JDF, that we call on them in times of disaster. Madam Speaker, the JCF is not to be outdone, because whilst we look upon the police mainly as a security force, you would be surprised that they fill the gap, being the social worker, being the firefighter, helping with medical issues, in addition to, well, the commissioner led the way with his power saw cutting down trees, but you can see that they were multifunctional in the disaster. And again, commendations to them. So, Madam Speaker, the JDF did suffer some losses. Several bases in the Western Command, including Frome, Paradise Park, Montpelier, and the Black River Coast Guard Station, were severely damaged. And we will ensure that these are rebuilt very quickly because that's important to stand up the operations. Working with the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the JDF has established a major relief hub at Up Park Camp, producing and distributing more than 11,000 family care packages delivered by both ground convoys and helicopter missions, including support from the U.S. Chinook aircrafts. This operation represents the highest standard of joint civil-military coordination and underscores the discipline and capacity of our armed forces. We also recognize and appreciate the international cooperation that has strengthened our security response. Support has come from the United States Southern Command, the government of El Salvador, with 287 personnel deployed, Canada through its operational support hub, the United Kingdom with an offshore patrol vessel, and regional partners including Belize, Bermuda, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and the Cayman Islands, which have provided support and aerial support, including helicopter support. This international solidarity has, and Venezuela. Venezuela has provided humanitarian relief. This international solidarity has significantly boosted our humanitarian and security operations. Madam Speaker, even as the JDF has worked tirelessly in the field, the Jamaica Constabulary Force has executed its mandate to maintain public order and protect infrastructure. More than 12,000 police officers were mobilized across all divisions before the storm's arrival, with incident command centers activated and integrated into the national and parish emergency operations. Following landfall, the JCF immediately transitioned to securing communities, protecting hospitals, water facilities, Petrojam and our airports, and escorting relief supplies into affected zones. I'm pleased to report that due to early planning, strong community cooperation, and visible police presence, we have had no major looting or disorder incident to date. Madam Speaker, I am aware that there are persons calling for the implementation of emergency measures, states of public emergency or curfews. Madam Speaker, these are being considered, but we are very sensitive to the current situation, and we do not want to impose further hardship on persons by imposing a security measure. At some point, however, when we have established, as we are now doing, the hub and spoke for a supply chain operation to ensure that there is a consistent flow of relief into communities, that will have to be protected. And therefore, we will have to put special measures around the routes that have to be traveled and protecting the areas where they are stored and distributed. As well as, Madam Speaker, we have to consider the availability of the human resources. And so there are areas that are sensitive that we will have to man and have regular foot patrols and the like. And therefore, it may become necessary in moderating that to have curfews and other measures put in place. But we are not at that point just yet. But these things are being planned out so that the security operations don't come into conflict with the humanitarian situation that currently exists. Madam Speaker, the eyes of the world have been on Jamaica as we confronted this ordeal, and the outpouring of solidarity has been extraordinary and deeply moving. The generosity shown to us reflects Jamaica's high standing and goodwill on the global stage. Even before Hurricane Melissa's landfall, messages of support and offers of assistance came from every region of the world. Since then, our relief efforts have been fortified by early and tangible aid from bilateral partners, regional and international organizations, non-governmental organizations, and the Jamaican diaspora. We are especially grateful for the outreach of His Majesty the King, the United Nations Secretary General, and many other heads of government who have conveyed their solidarity with Jamaica. We extend heartfelt thanks to our CARICOM brothers and sisters and regional agencies such as SEDIMA, CARFA, and the Caribbean Development Bank for their immediate engagement. Our bilateral partners from Belgium, Canada, Colombia, El Salvador, Venezuela, the European Union, the Dominican Republic, France, Germany, Luxembourg, India, Mexico, the Netherlands, Peru, Spain, the United Kingdom, the United States. A list that is, I have not exhausted. China, Japan, they've all committed support. And, Madam Speaker, what we have to do, in addition to the NGOs, which I haven't even mentioned, there are so many of them, but permit me to say the World Central Kitchen, Doctors Without Borders, Global Empowerment Mission, we call them GEM, Direct Relief, Samaritan's Purse. And of course, our own Food for the Poor. Madam Speaker, on our supportjamaica.gov.jm, which was built in record time by the Amber Group, which is the central hub for donations to Jamaica from the diaspora and the world. We have so far raised 170 million Jamaican dollars in contributions on that platform. And I encourage Jamaicans and our friends all over the world to give. Supportjamaica.gov.jm. All contributions go centrally to ODPEM, which is the government's official disaster management agency. Madam Speaker, I wish to make some important announcements as to how we are going to be managing the disaster. Madam Speaker, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, is the central agency for the government's disaster response. They work with all the critical agencies across government, the private sector, international aid agencies, and multiple governments. It is, however, clear that the response to Hurricane Melissa will require significant logistics experience. It will also require significant coordination. The Jamaica Defense Force is currently assisting with the logistics support to both ODPEM and the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, especially given the fact that many communities are situated in difficult terrain and several have been marooned. Given the nature of the response needed for the current relief effort and the coming reconstruction effort, it is important that ODPEM and the JDF have even greater levels of collaboration. As such, effective immediately, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, is reassigned to the Office of the Prime Minister to strengthen logistical collaboration with the Jamaica Defense Force. Madam Speaker, the Jamaica Defence Force is already under the office of the Prime Minister. Madam Speaker, this move will ensure that the relief effort is well coordinated and coordinated across government. The best place to achieve that, given the nature of the crisis and the speed with which we want the recovery, is for it to be centrally positioned in the office of the Prime Minister, which is what the office of the Prime Minister does. It coordinates all the entities. This realignment establishes virtually a single point for emergency logistics and further tightens coordination with relief partners. This is about speed, Madam Speaker. The new arrangement will accelerate the distribution of relief supplies in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa, better serve the most affected communities, and restore normalcy as quickly as possible. Madam Speaker, from a strategic perspective, and it is important that this be said, I've just listed the level of international response and NGO response. One of the things we don't want to happen is any fumbling. So logistics and coordination is absolutely important. And what we will create, Madam Speaker, is a plug-and-play system. Government can't do it all. We are the first to recognize that. We don't have enough helicopters. We don't have enough social workers. We don't have enough engineers. We don't have enough doctors. But what we want is a coordinated system where all of the goodwill that comes, whilst we get that benefit, but we must get one other thing from that, and that is synergy. And you can only get synergy where the sum of the parts are greater than the whole, when you have coordination. And that is the one thing that this administration has been good at in the management of crises and disasters. So we are going to create that plug-and-play operation to take advantage of the goodwill. At the end of the day, the people who are giving to Jamaica must say it was worth giving and I will give more. At the end of the day, they must say I am satisfied that my efforts achieve something and I can see it visibly because it was not interfered with by bureaucracy, lack of coordination, territorialism, or corruption. So we are going to make sure that we display to the world a first-class relief and recovery and rebuilding operation. Madam Speaker, the passage of Hurricane Melissa has left debris, disruption and dislocation in communities across the island. To accelerate recovery and restore order, the government will launch a national cleanup week. The Minister of Local Government already explained what that will be, but it will be the mobilization of the NSWMA, the NWA, and other entities that have capacity with the removal of debris. Now, it may very well be a cleanup month based upon the level of debris that has to be moved. In this effort, the members of Parliament will be called upon to play a critical role. There is a sense, Madam Speaker, that I have heard being bandied about that some members of Parliament were not integrated into the operations, or that there was some kind of favoritism where some constituencies got and others didn't get. Madam Speaker, let me stand here and say that there was never any intention or action on this government designed to marginalize, discriminate, isolate, alienate any member of Parliament. And we must dismiss out of hand any argument that would seek to divide this country politically when it comes to the distribution of aid. As far as I'm concerned, every Jamaican is entitled to the aid that comes in and to the spending of the government. There will be no politicization of aid. It never happened in COVID, it never happened in Beryl, and it will not happen. Madam Speaker, I can point out to you that the member from Eastern Westmoreland made his public comments. I saw them. I reached out to the leader of the opposition. I recognized your pain in what you said. I saw your public comments. I recognized the pain in what you said, and I asked the member from Southeast Clarendon, the Minister of Labour and Social Security, to reach out to you. It is only a matter of logistics why I was not able to land in Darliston or in White House. My friend, if the helicopters could have landed me there, I would have landed there, and I would have been by your side if I could find you. There was no attempt whatsoever. And the suffering of Jamaicans in your constituency, the suffering of Jamaicans in the constituency of North West St. Elizabeth is of concern. There are constituencies over here that we have not reached. Southern Trelawney, we haven't reached. Northwestern St. Elizabeth, we haven't reached. So all I'm saying, Madam Speaker, and to Jamaica, I must stand up firmly and close the door on any attempt to politicize aid in Jamaica. So in the cleanup, Madam Speaker, in the cleanup, where we are going to need the MPs to be active, we're going to need the MPs to be active in mobilization, because we won't have enough people to send into communities to clean up. It will have to be the communities, leader of the opposition, that do the cleanup. You have to mobilize the people. But it is also an opportunity for communities that have not had a chance to earn anything. We're going to try to put together a little stipend. Let me say it's a little stipend. It's not a pay. We will provide, colleagues, we will provide a stipend to assist the restart of economic activity through the cleanup. It's a small stipend. They will be able to go to the shop if shops are open. They'll get a little cash in hand to restart. That's the objective. But it does require, however, value for money. And that is why we're going to need the MPs there to ensure that we get the value for money. And I think that is only fair. The program is being developed. We will have to budget it, but you can start to prepare for that program. The minister very shortly will come and announce how that program will operate. But we really need to move the debris because it's a health hazard as well as an economic obstacle in many instances. In terms of housing support, Madam Speaker, across the island, our first priority has been to deliver food, water, and medical support to every affected community. But we know that beyond these essentials, the greatest need is now shelter. Too many of our brothers and sisters have lost the very roofs over their heads. To address this urgent need, I am announcing a building support program for households in the most affected parishes as follows, and this will be an MP-driven program again. St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Manchester, Hanover, St. James, Trelawney. $10 million will be allocated to each constituency in those parishes. You know, there was a debate in this House about whether or not any distribution to MPs should be done on a constituency basis equally. And I am of the view that every seat is equal. But in a disaster, that cannot hold. In a disaster, that cannot hold. In a disaster, that cannot hold. And I hope that MPs who were not as badly affected will not put pressure on me to make increased allocation. And So 10 million to the affected constituencies. Let me repeat: St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Manchester, Hanover, St. James, Trelawney. For St. Anne, Manchester, and Clarendon, $5 million will be allocated to each constituency. For St. Anne, Manchester. Oh, sorry. Oh, thank you for it. Thank you for reminding me. No, it's in there. Unless they made an error and corrected it. But Manchester really should be the 5. I will resolve it. No, there might very well be an error in it, but yes, no. I mean that Manchester really should be 5. But let me resolve it. You're really listening. I appreciate that. All right. I will resolve it. Forgive. There's an error, obviously, in the speech. I will resolve it. I will resolve it. And for the other constituencies, $3 million per constituency. I think it's a fair distribution based upon everything that we have to go through. The letters, we will send the letters out, and I will resolve the issue with Manchester. Madam Speaker, in addition to this, the National Housing Trust has activated a comprehensive package of support measures to help its contributors and mortgagors recover from the devastation caused by Hurricane Melissa. First, I wish to remind the public that all NHT mortgages are insured under the Trust's House Owners Comprehensive Policy, which covers damage from hurricanes, storms, floods, fire, and other perils. The NHT has already mobilized its branches island-wide to help mortgagors prepare and process their insurance claims quickly and efficiently. Second, recognizing that many families will need time to prioritize home repairs, the NHT will grant an automatic 6-month moratorium on mortgage payments for mortgagors in the worst affected parishes: St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Hanover, Trelawney, St. James, Manchester, and St. Anne. This measure will assist some 20,000 homeowners. For all other parishes, the NHT will continue to consider individual moratorium applications for those who have lost income or face special hardships. Third, the trust will introduce a special home improvement loan of up to $3.5 million at an interest rate of 2% available to both existing mortgagors and contributors who need to repair or rebuild their homes as a result of the. Finally, to further ease burdens, the NHD will provide a special grant of up to $500,000 to contributors to repair damage to their homes for those who the NHD will provide a special grant of up to $500,000 to contributors to repair damage to their homes or those of immediate family members. So we have kind of extended it a little bit. Grants will be awarded based on demonstrated need and the level of impact. So this is an assessment-based grant. Madam Speaker, we're also working with our international partners and the private sector to identify housing solutions, as I said before, that can be rapidly deployed at scale across most parishes. And as I said before, Minister Montague is working on that. There are some really viable, pre-built, prefabricated housing solutions. They may not be block and steel, but they are very durable and can be rapidly deployed as shelter solutions. Madam Speaker, in addition to the $1.5 million that had already been allocated to each constituency before the hurricane, which was for emergency relief, food, medicine, tarps, and so forth, I'm announcing an additional $1.5 million, which the leader of the opposition already announced it for me yesterday. The nation should know that we talk. And it looks like I'm telling him too much because he's announcing the things before I. But the leader of the opposition correctly got that one. So there will be another $1.5 million for MPs to use for the emergency response. But this one would be now mostly focused on food, medicine. Now, Madam Speaker, to speed the flow of humanitarian goods, the government had approached customs. Madam Speaker, to speed the flow of humanitarian goods, the government had approved customs duty and GCT exemption for the importation of relief supplies for one month, expiring November 28th. Recognizing that recovery efforts are ongoing and will extend beyond this 1 month period, we will extend this relief period by a further month to the end of December 2025. This measure will ensure that every shipment of relief supplies can reach our people quickly, efficiently, and without additional financial burden. In addition to the eligible items already announced by the Jamaica Customs, and in consideration of the extent of the damage to the electricity grid in the most affected parishes and projected timelines for complete restoration, I am announcing that persons will be allowed to import Starlink equipment and other such equipment, inverters, and solar power equipment, including panels and batteries, free of custom duty and GCT. Madam Speaker, this is in an attempt to get power and communication back into the communities that really need it. That really need it. Now, I know others will take advantage of it, but I appeal to every Jamaican. If you can buy 2 Starlinks and send one to a family or a community, do it. If you can buy solar batteries and solar panels and give it to a community or to a household in the affected parts of Jamaica, please do it. I will look into that because they are already giving a loan. But I know that when we give up these revenues, others will benefit from it who don't really need it. So I ask Jamaicans to use your conscience. Ensure that the other half of Jamaica that is suffering now benefit from this relief. Madam Speaker, while the needs across our nation are indeed great, we must also remain judicious and disciplined in the use of public funds. So, Leader of the Opposition, I couldn't give $50 million just so.
You're on your way. Next week. You're on your way. You're on your way.
Because, Madam Speaker, we have the bill coming from health. We have the bill coming for cleaning. We have the bill coming for schools. We have the bills coming for JDF and JCF. We have the bill coming for agriculture, for tourism, for water, not to mention the bill for roads. So, Leader of the Opposition, as I say, it sounds good, but it's wishful thinking. We couldn't do it. And the truth is, Leader of the Opposition, we may very well over a period of time do it. But at this present time, we have to literally be very careful with how we spend. So the truth is, Leader of the Opposition, as we speak, we see that there are other weather systems forming. We don't know. So we just have to be very careful with the resources that we have. And that's why I give the assurance that what we have will be fairly shared for every Jamaican. I want to announce two other things. In the COVID pandemic, we established an oversight committee of Parliament to review the work of the Ministry of Health in its operations. We will establish a similar oversight committee of Parliament to review the distribution, welfare, relief operations. I've given a direction to the House Leader to speak with the opposition leader of opposition business to establish that committee, the terms and how it will work. Madam Speaker, it is in the interest of the government to have the highest level of transparency in what we do. There is no victory for JLP communities to have food and PMP communities not. There is no victory, or vice versa. None whatsoever. And therefore, we will put in place every measure to ensure that whatever is given to us and whatever we spend from our budget, fairly done, everybody can see it, and everyone benefits. So as soon as we meet again by the next Parliament, that committee should be in place. A special joint select committee possibly that will look at the operations. All right? Madam Speaker, in a time of crisis, every Jamaican wants to participate. One of the greatest challenges you face in a time of crisis is to organize goodwill. It is a Leader of the Opposition, it is a real challenge to organize goodwill. Because there are some people who want to come and go on their own. There are some people who are saying, tell me what to do. And there are some who will tell you what to do. And it can become very confusing, bearing in mind that government operates by law and a particular structure. And it is very difficult to get people who have to operate by law to operate outside of that, meaning that you could have people with goodwill coming and say, do that, do this, but the agent who has the legal responsibility say, I can't take an instruction from you, or I have to see something in writing, or it has to go through a process. And so I have had to be spending my time in structuring the cabinet, in structuring how our permanent secretaries and others in government operate, to bear in mind that whilst we have the legal framework, there is an emergency, and therefore we have to operate with more speed and alacrity because there is human suffering that we are trying to minimize. That in itself is a task that the public will never see and probably will not understand. But that is why you have government. That is government business. Government must deal with that. And that is what I have been doing. And yes, we recognize the calls that have been made about establishing that committee or putting that. Of course we know that. We have never operated outside of that framework. We should, however, recognize that the history of our country is that the government does not stand on its own. Never has. Constitutionally, we are probably the only country where the leader of the opposition is entrenched in the Constitution. That it means that I can't go off on my own as Prime Minister. We'll take a ride together. Yeah. But it is the nature of our democracy. Our churches play a fundamental role in governance. So too our private sector. The question is now, how do you bring all of that together in a framework that satisfies everyone's purpose for participating, but at the same time delivers the best result for the people? That takes a little time to work out. We have people who have international reach, international influence, people in high offices all over the world. We have to put in place a structure that, so if they were to use their office, it's meaningful. They don't meet up on red tape and bureaucracy and then get frustrated and say, I can't bother with Jamaica. So before I pull people in, I have to make sure that when they come in, there is something meaningful for them to do. And we have been building that out. So I've had a discussion with Prime Minister Pattison and Prime Minister Golding. Yes, they are former Prime Ministers, but I always refer to them as Prime Ministers, because that is the respect I pay to them. So I've had a discussion with them, and they are eager to help. But we have to find the right mechanism as to how they can give support. And we are in dialogue as to how that could happen. There are other Jamaicans in high offices all over the world calling me up, I want to help, I want to help. We are working out how that can be. Now, in the phase that we are, which is the relief phase, there's not so much to do other than to make sure the logistics work. Because in the relief phase, what you need is that aid comes in, it moves to a storage area which is central, you record it, which is what ODPEM does, and then the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the Ministry of Local Government say, hey, here are the communities, here are the people, and the JDF works out the logistics for movement, where private sector vehicles and other vehicles and trucks and whatever can assist in moving them to the hub in the region, and then they are broken down into spokes into various communities. And that is what we are trying to establish now, because that supply chain operation has to stand up for at least 2 months. And then, of course, Parliament has to have oversight on it. Why is this community getting and not that community? Hey, you forgot that community. Hey, you should put some more. That's what the oversight committee will do. And that's how that relief I'm expecting will operate. But we will have to immediately, almost in parallel, transition to recovery, where we have to answer difficult questions. Should Black River be where it is? How do we build a resilient town in Black River? What are we going to do with Falmouth? Precisely. What are we going to do with the hospitals? Should we rebuild these hospitals with zinc roofs? And schools. All of these are questions that we have to work out. And there are political issues involved, and so it really does need that kind of senior, experienced politicians, statesmen who have been in the system long, who can help that conversation along in order to make these massive changes that are needed to make Jamaica resilient. So as we get into those discussions, you will see the importance of having persons like our statesmen, people of influence and high regard in the society, guiding debate, convening, and giving support. And that is being structured as we speak. This is a crisis, Madam Speaker. And it is one thing that we must never do, is waste a crisis. The other word for crisis is opportunity. And this is an opportunity, Madam Speaker, to make Jamaica stronger. So as I close, Madam Speaker, I want to thank all Jamaicans who have participated in the national effort to ensure that we are recovering, that our brothers and sisters in the other half of the island that was struck, that they are getting relief. It is not perfect. I'm certain that as I speak, there are communities now that have not yet been reached, that there may very well be bodies that have not yet been collected. I'm certain that there is a child that is hungry as I speak. But as I speak, I know, Madam Speaker, that the systems are being rapidly put in place to ensure that that human suffering comes to an end very quickly. And I know that with unity, togetherness, genuine unity and togetherness, Jamaica will recover and recover stronger. Madam Speaker, there is the National Partnership Council. Again, a feature, has become a feature of our government. I intend to call the Partnership Council either this week or early next week, depending on diaries and availability. And in that, under that umbrella, we will have the churches and all the other civic organizations to have this discussion around national unity for recovery. And it can't only be a discussion. There has to be commitment to unity. And as I stand here, Madam Speaker, I am committed to a unified approach to the recovery. So, Madam Speaker, I want to thank the House and thank listeners and thank Jamaicans for paying attention to this presentation. God bless Jamaica.
Responding will be the Leader of the Opposition. Prime Minister, could you turn the mics off?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the Prime Minister for his presentation today. It covered a great deal of ground and provided useful information as to how we as members of Parliament can expect to operate in the near future, and also the longer-term approach that the government wishes to take in grappling with this catastrophic tragedy that has befallen our nation. I want to also take this opportunity to express my heartfelt condolences to the families and loved ones of all who have perished in this terrible catastrophe, whether in the storm itself or in the aftermath. And to express my sympathies to the thousands of Jamaicans whose lives have been severely disrupted by the impact of this cataclysmic hurricane. Madam Speaker, in this House are many MPs who have been living among the people who are going through this suffering. And there's no doubt that it has been a traumatic and emotional experience for them. I hope that this afternoon you will allow them an opportunity to speak to what they've seen and what their thoughts and feelings are about it, because I think it's very important that they get that opportunity. Many of them have come from far to be here today, and I hope you will indulge them with that. Madam Speaker, we are fortunate, I think, that Kingston and St. Andrew was largely spared from the devastation of this hurricane. It has enabled the government to function. It has enabled Parliament to meet in normal conditions. And it shows the critical importance of being able to function as a government and as political representatives in the aftermath of an event such as this. One can't really imagine how we would be responding were the path of that hurricane to have been one which had visited that kind of destruction on the decision-making nerve center of the country. And it's something we have to bear in mind as we plan for the future. Madam Speaker, I look forward to hearing from the Minister of Finance in due course, hopefully soon, on the financial implications of what has happened, on the layered financing structure that is in place for dealing with natural disasters in Jamaica. We know that the agricultural sector has suffered an immense hit. Farmers have suffered huge losses. And of course, in that regard, it is not limited to just the West. I know that there are farmers in many parts of Jamaica which have suffered major hits, Minister. I'm sure you would agree. And so in how we design relief, we have to take that into account. It is, although the West is devastated and requires utmost care and attention and sympathy and resources and coordination, as you have said, there are many other parts of Jamaica that have also suffered significant damage and losses, and that has to be taken into account as well. I think everyone in this House must be extremely concerned about the impact of the hurricane on our students. Many schools have been very badly hit, and Unfortunately, in those areas, that has also come with the failing of the electricity supply system and internet connectivity. So the option which existed in COVID, where one could rapidly try to transition to online learning and so on, is not readily available as a solution at this time. This means that we have to have a very creative and flexible approach to bringing students back into the education system to minimize learning loss, take into account the need to do so safely, and also take into account the psychological impact that this hurricane has had on them, and indeed their teachers, principals, and everyone else involved in the education system. And we look forward to hearing more of that in due course. Madam Speaker, right now there are tens of thousands, one doesn't know the number.
House Leader, the member's time for speaking has expired. The standing orders were not
I don't have a 30
suspended.
page
The standing
speech.
orders, House Leader, the standing orders were not suspended to allow for the completion. Could you please move? So move.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the standing orders be suspended to allow the Leader of the Opposition to complete his presentation.
Thank you, House Leader. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate that indulgence. I think that's a good start. I hope, as I've said, similar indulgences will be afforded my colleagues when their time comes to respond to the Prime Minister's statement. Where I was going, Madam Speaker, I was making the point that as we speak, tens of thousands, an untold number really, of our Jamaican people are living in conditions which are unbearable. Many have lost homes. Many have lost all their belongings. Many are in communities which are cut off. Many are struggling to find food. Water is a big problem because the water supply systems have been impacted by the lack of electricity, the turbidity, and other issues. So we must move rapidly to address that crisis. The provision of shelter and the longer-term solutions to the rebuilding of homes or the establishment of new solutions, that will require planning and careful thought. And I endorse the view that we cannot just do what we've done before, because we are in a new era. We're in an era where the Caribbean Sea is warming, and it has several negative effects. And one of those effects is that the storms that are emerging in the season are stronger, and they're also moving and in ways which we weren't accustomed to before. So we can expect, as the Prime Minister has said, that we will have fairly frequent situations which we have to address, and we must be more resilient, and that requires serious thought as to how we rebuild and where we rebuild. But in the immediate term, you have little children, you have the elderly, you have pregnant mothers, you have persons with disabilities who are catching at a friend's house or a relative's house. Some of them are just under a makeshift piece of tarpaulin strung up over some structure or other, and they are at risk. The public health aspect of this, the Prime Minister made reference to it. I think it's a very serious issue. There is massive settlement of water in large parts of St. Elizabeth and Westmoreland, and no doubt other parishes. St. Anne, rivers broke their banks. Underground water is behaving in unusual ways, and they see when you pass through, you see numerous dead animals, often in those ponded waters. This presents a serious public health risk, and we have to address that very carefully. There is also a major public health risk from people with chronic diseases who need medications which need to be kept in cool conditions, refrigerated conditions, who don't have access to refrigerated conditions for medication. There's a huge risk that those persons will suffer negative health consequences from not being able to maintain their normal course of treatment for their conditions. We have to address that. So in the hub and spoke model which we're trying to build out, that needs to be taken into account fully so that there can be a delivery of health care to people in communities who are currently not getting it. And I'm sure others will speak to that in greater detail. Prime Minister, I have some concerns, and you've heard my recommendation, and I'm glad you're giving it thought, and I'm glad you're listening to what we're saying so carefully, and listening to others as well. That's a good thing. I too want to endorse, as I have been, the importance of us as leaders in this society being united in the response to this terrible calamity. Communities have supporters of both sides who have been impacted by this thing. We are Jamaicans, and we love each other, we love our nation, and we must approach dealing with this with mutual respect, care, and love. And I can assure you, Prime Minister, that we genuinely seek to be part of the solution to help Jamaica get through this. You can count on us cooperating and playing a constructive role to the extent we are afforded the opportunity to do so. And I hope that in the design of the overall mechanism for charting the course forward, for dealing with the rollout of the recovery and reconstruction, that the need for unity, the confidence that will come when people at home and abroad see a united mechanism, a mechanism built on that principle being the way in which it is done. I think that there's a lot to be said for that, and that's why I made the recommendation that I have. One of the concerns I have is currently the command structure is not well understood, if there is one. And I have had to be trying to identify points of entry into the disaster response mechanisms that have been established in order to provide information, vital information, that those who are handling the response need to know in order to respond and deal with these situations quickly. And we need to have clear lines of communication into the chain of command for the different aspects of what is manifesting itself now, so that we know who to approach and how to deal with that. It cannot be ad hoc. It cannot be totally informal. It must be transparent. It must be clear what it is. And there must be accountability for how the resources which are going to be deployed are deployed, so that the people providing those resources, especially persons who are doing it out of the kindness or generosity of their heart and spirit, feel that the sacrifice they are making on behalf of the Jamaican people are sacrifices that were well worth making, and they feel that their sacrifices have been treated with the respect that is due to it, by ensuring that it is used for the desired purpose and for no other purpose. And in that governance oversight mechanism isn't clear to me at the moment, and I think it's very important that it become clear and that it be consistent with the principle of inclusion and unity that you have spoken to in your address. Prime Minister, the impact on the economy will be profound. The tourism sector has taken a heavy hit. Many hotel assets have suffered damage in various degrees of severity. Some have been very badly hit, some have been moderately hit, some have got off relatively lightly, and we're glad for that. We know that agriculture is going to be, has been decimated, and this will impact the price of foods, and this will impact the availability of foods. And we need to address food security issues quickly so that our people do not suffer in this time. There will be displacement of employment. How we're going to respond to that, that remains to be seen. During COVID, funding was provided to hotels that were shut down to enable employment to continue for a period of time. I don't know whether that mechanism will be considered again or whether there will be a massive public works program to absorb and labor and provide people with opportunities to earn something during the period of recovery. But these things are very important, and we look forward to hearing them and even participating in their development if we're allowed to do so. Madam Speaker, equity is critical at this time. People are on edge, people are angry, people are afraid, and if they feel that the way in which the relief effort is being deployed on the ground is not consistent with the way in which it is being articulated in Parliament and elsewhere, it will cause problems. I have some concerns. I am not going to raise them here today. I'm going to speak because they're very specific issues, but I'm going to talk to the persons who I think can address them. But the point I want to make, Prime Minister, is that you have given a commitment here today that nobody should suffer any disadvantage because of anything to do with political affiliation or indeed who they are and where they are. The issue is need and the response to the need. And everybody should be treated proportionately in accordance with the extent of their need. And I would ask every member of this House, every MP who's going to have responsibility for allocations that are being provided to help people to approach it in that way and to ensure that it's based on need and it's not based on whether the person vote for this one or that one. That is not relevant now. That's right. What matters now is helping our people to get back on their feet, whether they're Labourite or PNP or no P at all. Prime Minister, I agree with the extension of the exemption from customs duty for an additional month to facilitate the tremendous goodwill towards Jamaica being actualized in tangible demonstrations of things coming into the country to help our people. 30 days would have been unduly short given the time it takes to get the logistics of those things worked through. An additional month is helpful, and I'm sure you will take that into account and under advisement and watch it as things go along. But I do agree with that, And in fact, I had suggested it as well. So I'm glad we're seeing it. The National Week of the Cleanup Week, like the idea, I think it will help us all pull together. One thing I would say in the design of it, already there are people in my constituency, for example, I'm sure I'm not the only one, who want to go and help in the areas where they're the most need. And I would love if in the National Cleanup Week, we're all going to get some allocation for that. But to the extent that our cleanup needs are not nearly at the scale of some other areas, if we could lend a hand in other communities or constituencies where there's a real need, I think that would be a very therapeutic and appropriate way of us all pitching in this time. I will. Them go alert. So, Prime Minister, I don't want to speak for long because I know others need to have an opportunity to speak today. And as I've said before, I hope they'll be afforded that opportunity. There's a lot of pain in the land, a lot of angst, and we as human beings who care about our constituents, who are elected to represent and want to make their lives better, faced with the suffering that is there on the ground, it is having a serious impact on everybody, including us. And I think being able to come here and speak to those issues, express our concerns, and so on, is a very important thing. And I now will yield to allow others to make their own contributions today. I thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. Members, the floor is now open for you to ask questions. Prime Minister, if it so pleases you, we would appreciate your response at the end of all questions. Thank you, Prime Minister. Members?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I could respond directly to the Leader of the Opposition and then afterwards.
Members, could you turn your mics off, please? Prime Minister, could you turn your mic on, please? No, Prime Minister, just turn your mic on again, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition raised a few concerns, not really questions, but I will treat them as questions and answer them as such. Right, so, but I'll treat them as questions and answer them as such. The concern about health care. The government is taking it seriously. The Minister of Health has brought to Cabinet yesterday a budget for the initial recovery of the healthcare system. We'll make that public very shortly as soon as we have resolved how we're going to fund it. But an important point towards the provision of healthcare. 7 days after the disaster struck, we can report that we have stood up a field hospital in Black River, sponsored by Samaritan Spurs. It is a 30-bed facility with operating theater, ICU, pharmacy. It comes with a helicopter, I gather. It has 60 staff members from the Samaritan Spurs, supported by Jamaican doctors, and they will be able to augment the services that are now very limited from the Black River Hospital for the entire Central District. It is almost as if you have a brand new functioning hospital right there. Of course, it is temporary in infrastructure, but it will provide the service. We will have 4 more deployed around the island in short order, and these will be in the Noel Homes in Hanover, SAV in Westmoreland, and Cornwall Regional. So, And Falmouth, forgive me. And Falmouth, I missed Falmouth. I said 4 and I called 3. So in the most affected areas, we will see a restoration of service delivery in healthcare that will ensure that the worst that we would expect after such a disaster does not materialize. As it relates to management, Leader of the Opposition, you will recall that last year I commissioned a review of our disaster response mechanism, because seeing it firsthand, I was not satisfied with the response. Though we did very well, we were able within 2 weeks to move to the recovery stage and so forth. But you know, in today's world, everyone expects immediate, instantaneous response. People are not going to take into consideration that, you know, Jamaica is a small country. You know, we don't have enough helicopters. It takes 3 or 4 days for the helicopters from our partners to get here. They're not going to be concerned that the roads are blocked and the equipment mobilization takes some time. When I look at the response of Jamaica relative to other countries that have been impacted by a Category 5, to report what we can report on day 6, which is yesterday. So, Madam Speaker, you know, but having said that, we recognize that we must strengthen coordination and management so that the questions that you raise regarding certainty as to who is responsible or certainty of response. I mean, we have had a complaint that, you know, someone is calling to give aid or to make an offer for something and they can't get a response. Or the person who answers says, I have to go and clear it at another level, and then it takes so long to come back. These are issues which we have to resolve. And I would say to you, Leader of the Opposition, that in addition to moving ODPEM under OPM, we have also now appointed a new Director General. It's Commander Alvin Gale. He has been seconded from the JDF to take leadership of ODPEM, to streamline the operations of ODPEM. So we are taking the measures, and we will be doing other changes and restructuring as we are at the same time scaling up the relief effort.
The floor is now open to questions. Members, I would have had a discussion with the Leader of Opposition Business. We will continue to apply the standing orders. Please take a look at Standing Order 17, particularly 17B as it relates to Prime Minister's question time, and 17C as it relates to Minister's question time. Thanks, members. And this is particularly as it relates to national disasters and matters of national interest. Thank you. First member.
Madam Speaker.
The member from Portland Eastern. I haven't touched your mic, member from Portland Eastern. I haven't touched it. So, members. The member from Manchester South.
It's my mic.
The member from Westmoreland Eastern, sorry. The mic system doesn't allow for any of those arrangements. When I suggested that members, take your seat. Take your seat, member from Westmoreland Eastern. Members, the first sitting had persons turning on their mics and turning them off like a musical chair. We worked out as a parliament, along with the clerks, a mechanism that we thought would be very efficient. However, persons have raised objections to holding their hand up. If hands are held up and we do not turn on the mic until you're recognized, then it makes it easier if you turn your mic off by accident to be able to speak next. However, you currently have 4 mics on. So if you turn off your mic, then we will have to turn off everyone's mic to go back to that order. Or we just continue. So, member from Portland Eastern, you would now be at the back of the line. I didn't touch your mic other than to turn it on. Member from Westmoreland East, your questions, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a few questions. At the outset, nothing that I say is politically motivated. I guess when a politician is saying something, people naturally think it's political because it's coming from a politician.
Member, just straight to the question.
Madam Speaker, please. I have a mother that is in St. Anne. I don't have one in here.
Member,
right?
question, please.
Don't do that.
Straight to the question, member.
Don't respond to that.
I am simply trying to set the context of what I'm saying by saying that nothing that I have to say here is politically motivated. It's a simple point.
No, but there must be a reason why I feel the need to say because of the social media saying.
My first question, because I think we have to learn from what we do. My first question. In the preparation for the hurricane, when the initial allocation was made of $200 million, we were told that some of us constituencies were not included in that allocation of $200 million. We raised concerns because the system was bigger than the country, several times bigger, and clearly would have affected every parish. Looking at what happened, where Westmoreland was told that we're not a priority, and landfall was made in eastern Westmoreland, do we think that we have the appropriate mechanism in place to make the allocations for impending weather events like this?
Good question. Good question. Good question.
My second question. In the lead up again to the hurricane, we were told that the supplies would not get to the shelters until the system started and persons started going to the centers. Do you think that was the appropriate decision, seeing that we were preparing for a Category 5 hurricane, and naturally it would have caused disruption in access to get to the shelters? I could have made my points easier, but since you want to put them as questions, I just put them as questions. Do we have an idea, an accurate count of the number of deaths that have occurred in Jamaica? No. Because based on my count from my own constituency, in the Darliston division, there are 12. In the Leamington division, 4. Betheltown division, 2. And 7 in the White House division, which is giving me 25. So do we have an accurate count as to the number of deaths that have taken place in the country? Do we believe that the response to retrieve the bodies was appropriate? Because we've had funeral homes that had to come for some, and the community members had to bury others in eastern Westmoreland. So do we believe that the response has been adequate to pick up the bodies? In terms of the response of ministries, departments, and agencies, how do we go about making an assessment on how we deploy personnel from ministries, departments, and agencies to constituencies that are affected? Eastern Westmoreland is where landfall was made. A Category 5 hurricane, the eye of it, so that carries the eye wall, went across the constituency, starting in New Hope to Darleston to Betheltown, and then over into South St. James. Total devastation and destruction along the entire constituency. Do we believe that enough personnel from ministries, departments, and agencies have been mobilized for a constituency like this, which is in fact the actual ground zero of the hurricane? My next question: do we think that the condition that obtains in the shelters currently is adequate? The Maud MacLeod shelter in Darleston, the persons there are sleeping on the desk that are within the shelter. Not one mattress is at the facility. Females are there that are having their monthly cycles without any form of supplies being given to that center. 3-month-old baby in the center. Do we think that sufficient work is being done in the centers, in the shelters that currently obtain? There are over, by my estimation, at least 2,000 homes that are flat, not damaged. They are totally destroyed. The foundation is all that you see. Do we think enough is being done to provide shelter, food, and water for those persons who have been displaced? I'm encouraged, Prime Minister, by some of what you have said. I'm encouraged by some of what you have said. Not being unreasonable, I'm encouraged by some of what you have said. The establishment of the points by the JDF is something that is long overdue, so that we can have access points across the constituency where you can airlift supplies to and then distribute from there, and that we can get medical personnel in place. The hurricane itself and the destruction that it has caused is a high-stress environment. To be hypertensive, have high blood pressure, and be out of your medication in a high-stress environment is a recipe for disaster. It's a ticking time bomb. So those persons that are within Eastern Westmoreland that needs medical care, the centers have to be set up urgently in a way that the Army can mobilize persons to the different communities so they can attend to persons. There are at least 3 communities that are still marooned. And at Grand Gala, we see soldiers rappelling from the helicopters. It can't be just practice. Now is the real thing. Beeston Spring, which are Beeston Spring, the 3 areas that are marooned, Beeston Spring and a community called Touch Valley, and there's another section there called Left Hall, and then you have Amity. up in close to the border with South St. James. PM, my own assessment, and I'm not a specialist in this, but my own assessment, looking at the damage to the housing stock, is that I believe that the only thing that I see that can quickly deal with it is the containerized housing solutions that come anywhere between 3,000 to 4,000 US landed and erected.
Member, do you have any more questions?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I do.
Okay, please,
yes,
member.
I do. Yes, I do.
Please, member, questions.
What is the possibility of us, as a country, putting a program together that will see us being able, and I'm sure the other members from Westmoreland will speak for themselves, but and surrounding areas, because Northwest St. Elizabeth is in the same category, you know. So it's not a political point that I am making, because the damage there is just as bad. What is the possibility of us being able to implement a program quickly where we can get some of those units erected, so at least we can get that mother from under the tarpaulin with her children? That is the current situation in Belmont and Bluefields and elsewhere across the constituency. We also need, if you want me to ask it as a question, when will we be able to have some repair done to the gas station facilities, so that when somebody says to me they're coming from Kingston, I don't have to ask them to bring me low sulfur so that I can drive? When will we have some facility in place that persons can get access to fuel, so that they can, even the elected officials, that they can actually go to the communities? Madam Speaker, I have nothing but concern for the people that I represent. I don't care who they voted for. Not my concern at this time. I'm talking about the people and how they are currently living. Anybody who doubts what I am saying, take a trip for yourself. And if it doesn't cause you to have tears, then you are not human. Anybody that doubts what I'm saying, take a trip for yourself. If you think that I am just here grandstanding, take a trip for yourself and have a look at the situation. It is a total and complete disaster in eastern Westmoreland, and this is a cry for help.
The member from Westmoreland Central. So two mics came up. Member from St. Andrew East, please do not turn your mic off.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Members, for those persons who have turned their mics on, it would be very good to put them up, because then it's easier to see that your mic has been turned on. Thank you.
All right, Madam Speaker, my first question is with regard to the health system. There was mention of the hospitals and what we've done to the public hospitals that were damaged. But I'm asking if there's any consideration for the health centers, especially in the remote areas, because it's still difficult for persons to travel from those areas to the Savlamar Hospital, for example. So places like Williamsfield, places like Cornwall Mountain, that the centers have been really devastated, destroyed significantly. We were wondering if anything will be put in place, like, for example, makeshift tents, for example, and the staffing will still be there to accommodate these people so they don't have to come to the staff hospital that you already know has been burdened before the disaster, much less after the disaster. So we're asking for some consideration there. My second question is regards to the container houses. The member from Eastern had mentioned it, but I just want to know if there will be an actual allocation per constituency, especially in those areas that were damaged so badly. Westmoreland is known for wooden structures, and you would have imagined those of you who would have been there would have seen the devastation. Thousands of houses were destroyed. We know we won't be able to fix everybody's house. But we're asking, for example, in these constituencies like Westmoreland Central, Westmoreland Eastern, Westmoreland Western, for example, so all the constituencies that were severely damaged, if there will be a special allocation for those constituencies that we know had these wooden structures and naturally would have suffered more than other constituencies that don't have so many wooden structures. And if so, with the construction of these, will it be a centralized thing where they're constructed one place and sent down? Or will we have contractors in different areas so this process can be speeded up instead of us waiting on one particular person to make all of these, which would definitely take a longer time. My next thing, the Prime Minister mentioned that he's waiting on the road bill, which we all know is a serious thing. But what I'm asking, if there has been any deployment of the NWA team to identify emergency areas. So for example, in the Froome area, the road has severely been compromised where the bridge at Ricketts River is. Part of the road is gone. So the bridge is now severely compromised and we don't know if it can collapse at any point in time. So we're asking if a team has already been deployed to actually identify the emergency areas, because those areas will have to be looked at even before you get the total road bill for where the damage is expected to be. And my last question is with regards to the distribution of the food packages. I know the Prime Minister stated earlier in his presentation that there is no intent from the government to have any unfair or politicize anything. But there was a situation today in Westmoreland, and even after I spoke to the minister, the minister reached out to me this morning to let me know that an helicopter was coming down with food supplies from the ministry. And after the helicopter came, there was total chaos down there. What I can tell you is that before the helicopter came, the former MP and his team was there with trucks and stuff. There are videos of everything being loaded basically in those things. So the thing you're trying to avoid by not politicizing it, it actually played out today. The minister had no part in it based on my conversations with him because he directly spoke to me. And I had a team who went there. But the staff, I don't know where the communication came from. But what we realized happened that somebody obviously communicated with the former member of parliament. I am not there obviously today because I'm here. And what really happened is that that distribution today has now been labeled as being political, because everybody who went there would have seen that form of politics being played out today. So what we're trying to avoid, just as what you said, actually played out in central Westmoreland today. So what I'm asking is, going forward, how do we decide on how we do this type of distribution? Because one, if you go to one place and everybody comes there, there's going to be chaos. So naturally, if a helicopter is coming, one, you're going to need enough police and soldier presence there. And what we would want to know is that we ensure that the coordination is there where we know exactly what is coming, where we're going to collect it. So if the MP is in charge, we will coordinate with the local team at the ministry, at the NIS office. We'll speak to the manager, for example, work out the way how we'll distribute, because somebody has to lead it. And in this case, you have to trust the member of parliament to say we're not going to send it only to PNP communities, but we are Jamaicans, and we will be distributing it equally across every community that we know needs assistance. So we have no problem in working out all of those things, but we don't want it, what happened today, to ever happen again, because as I said, it left a bitter taste in the mouths of many of the citizens. Persons have been calling me since I've been here. I'm always on the phone, people texting me, asking me, what is really happening here? Because as I said, what would have showed up today, it would seem as if the former MP, who is now the caretaker, was the person who was in charge today on spot for the distribution of the items. And we don't want that to be in the thoughts of the people, because we know that is supposed to be the case. So going forward, I'm asking, how are we going to do these things differently so we don't have a repeat of what happened today? So those are my questions.
Madam Speaker,
Thank you, the member from St. Andrew South East, and then
Clarendon North.
and then the member from Clarendon North.
Madam Speaker, my question to the Prime Minister. Can the government confirm whether it has received confirmation that it will get the full payout of the $150 million US catastrophe bond which we undertook? My understanding is that we have received, or the payout is on its way for the $70 million Caribbean catastrophe risk insurance bond. CRIF. The policy. If we get the full payout, Madam Speaker, both would amount to about 35 billion Jamaican dollars. Based on the Prime Minister's initial estimates of between 6 to 7 billion US dollars, which is about 1 trillion Jamaican dollars, even with the relaxation of the fiscal rules, and you might have 2 to 3% of GDP space, we still will have a significant shortfall. So my question to the government and the Ministry of Finance, have we commenced discussions, negotiations, submissions, particularly to the IMF that has a rapid funding facility that would allow us to access money to deal with all the priorities that you spoke about and that the members have raised? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I spent the last 6 days going through the constituency of Northern Clarendon, and the housing stock have been severely affected. So I'd like to ask the Prime Minister if the allocation of $5 million to the constituency, if he believes that is sufficient. We have more than 500 homes that have been affected, more than 100 persons who are homeless and are spending time with friends or family within the constituency, and that needs to be remedied urgently. We also have a road network that was non-existent, but with the rainfall, we now have nowhere to pass in some parts of the constituency. And we have a gully network now, according to Comrade Bunting. And we want to know if, or Member Bunting, I apologize. I want to know if there will be any allocation for special treatment to the road network and infrastructure in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Melissa. And thirdly, we have 3 communities in Northern Clarendon that are labeled to be flood prone: Indian Town, Anderson Town, and Bagwell. And those were flooded during the hurricane. And Anderson Town and Bagwell is currently inundated. Marooned, I had to get into Bagwell by going on a raft on Saturday. I want to know more from a medical standpoint as well, what sort of health support we will put in there, given that we know that mosquito infestation will take place and all the different mosquito-borne diseases that will arrive thereafter. And my last question is, with the drains, rivers, and sinkholes that are in those 3 communities, do we believe that adequate attention and resources were provided for them so that they could have been prepared for the flooding that came? And I would like to understand, I would like to understand from the Prime Minister if we're going to be treating those 3 communities, Anderson Town, Bagwell, and Indian Town, in any special way because of the lay of the land and how they are situated. The member from South West St. Ann is a neighboring constituency and understands the space very well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Next is the member from Westmoreland Western.
Prime Minister, let me start off by saying, Prime Minister, who are you? Oh? Prime Minister, let me endorse a lot of the things that you have spoken about. Number one, Prime Minister, I'm in a constituency where there is almost 1,000 of our citizens have left homeless or without a home. Just total devastation. I hear you spoke about the Fair Trade Commission, and I just want to ask you a question. Well, a statement and a question. The price of gas has almost doubled in Westmoreland. Gas, food, building material, bus, and taxi fare. Now, I would like you to explain to me more or less.
Would you be so kind? Pull your mic a little bit closer to you. I think it may help with the volume.
I would like an answer. I would like an answer, Prime Minister. How
So members from St. Catherine Southwest, if persons abide by the ruling, no matter what, the system would work. Because the ruling was that members turn on their mic when they are observed by the speaker in keeping with the standing orders. However, members have chosen to turn on their mics, and once it goes off, you are at the back of the line. So persons complain about meeting the speaker's eye. Hopefully, over a little time, we will get there. We'll get there. So, I've turned on the mic. I'm not seeing it. Okay, the member from St. Catherine South. You'll have to go through the rounds. No. Unless all persons would like to turn off their mics, or maybe the member would like to go and speak from a seat other than your own, and then swap back with the member.
Prime Minister, as I was saying before, in a question, when you speak about the Fair Trade Commission...
Member, your volume is low, so you may want to pull the mic closer to you.
The price of fuel has doubled. The price of food has doubled. The price of building material doubled. Taxi and bus fare have doubled also. I want you to give me an answer to how the government going to work within Westmoreland, Western, or the parish of Westmoreland, in stopping some of the abuses which are taking place with our citizens. That's number one. Number two is when you speak to the assessment that will be done. Prime Minister, I want to ask a question. It's hard when you go to a citizen home and the citizen basically is without a roof. I think, and this is just a suggestion, Prime Minister, if we could more or less hire 100 persons in every constituency to go out and start doing the assessment, because it's hard to tell a man who's without a roof that he's going to have to wait until we clear all the roads, until we put all the mechanism in place to ensure synergy and all of that good stuff. So I'm recommending to you, Prime Minister, asking you, would it be possible for every constituency that is affected, for the Ministry of Labour, or whoever it is, for us to get some temporary labor to go around and do this assessment? That's two. Three is the shelters. and I speak about the shelter in Townhead and other shelters. There's no bed, there's no food. Persons are sleeping on the concrete. And I'm just wondering if we could pay some more attention to Westmoreland. I don't want to say everything here because the international press is here, and you don't hear everything out to the public. But Prime Minister, I'm willing to have a conversation in terms of where we go from here, in terms of how do we help our people. In terms of when you speak to tourism, we have thousands of workers now that are without a job in the tourism sector. The leader of the opposition mentioned some level of compensation for tourism workers. But a couple of weeks ago, the Minister of Tourism came here and he said that under the IDB, there was $1 billion for small hotels to refurbish. And I want to ask the Prime Minister, could a part of that $1 billion be used for grant funding in terms of ensuring that the hotels in the constituency, the workers within the constituency, something can be worked out where between the workers and the hotel, the tourism sector, both work hand in hand in ensuring that we can get up running pretty soon. Prime Minister, the level of devastation / destruction that is in Westmoreland. I heard Member Vaz speak to just the level of trust in terms of the members of parliament and the government. I want to work with the government in ensuring that we help all citizens. And it's very important. And it's very important from the side of the government also that you do everything in your powers to ensure that there's a level of fairness and there's a level of honesty in working with the members of parliament in Westmoreland, St. Elizabeth, or wherever, in ensuring that our people get the necessary needs and wants in going forward. Thank you.
Member from St. Catherine South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our Prime Minister, I too join in welcoming this statement and much of what you have addressed. A couple of questions, Prime Minister. One that has been raised regarding the extension of the custom duty exemption for a further month, but a couple of things I never got them. One, if items are shipped before the expiration date, would they qualify for the exemption? What are the details of before the expiration, if they would benefit from it? Goods in transit. Okay, fine. The second question on that point, Prime Minister, there are a list of items clearly set out in the customs public document, but things such as heavy equipment, where you have external parties who are prepared to come to the country, bring their own equipment, heavy equipment, to be used with intention to re-export them upon the completion of their, after 1 year, year and a half, and so forth. Will considerations be given for those items critical to the recovery and rebuilding that don't fall in the published list that we are aware of? Next question, Prime Minister. I heard in the media the big cry of many in Western Jamaica about being able to access cash. One quotation is that cash is king. Nobody is selling any item on credit. Many of the digital platforms are down from connectivity, electricity, etc. And cash becomes the only currency of transaction. In light of this national situation, where cash is critical to that side of the country. Can some consideration be made with the banks, financial institution, to, one, have banks in close proximity to those areas, and within those areas where there's electricity, etc., be open for extended hours within and around those areas that are so badly affected. Secondly, in regards to cash, for all the financial institutions to waive fees and withdrawal of cash from their account for this, in this circumstance. ATM machines, there are charges. With in-bank withdrawal, there are charges. For internal transfers, there are charges. It is inconceivable that the financial institution will not be willing to give favorable consideration, and worse, that they have not yet done it on their own initiative. But it is better to be late than never. Thirdly, it's health-related, Prime Minister. Much have been said, both by the Leader of the Opposition and the member from Eastern Westmoreland, about the influx or increase in mosquito infestation. My constituency and Portmore is not there, and thankfully we have been spared. But what is certain is that we're going to have high mosquito infestation in Portmore. Well, it has started already. Prime Minister, it's a time of national emergency. The Portmore municipality has long indicated its willingness to assume that function if the Ministry of Health will delegate that authority to them to do it. As Member of Parliament, I am prepared to give some of my CDF allocation. I'm certain my colleague from Southeast St. Catherine and from East Central St. Catherine will be willing to make some contribution so that there is some local control and some efficiency in having mosquito control in that area on a regular basis. And in that regard, I plead your consideration. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member. That's the middle mic.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Prime Minister, for allowing us to speak. I come here today with a heavy heart and burdened by the devastation
Member,
that I left behind.
just to
Hanover.
introduce you, member from Hanover Eastern.
Thank you. I am disappointed that efforts were made to get information with regards. I have questions. The questions are coming, but it is indeed important that I make it the public and the Eastern Hanover citizens be aware that efforts were made and pleas were made for help.
So, member, in keeping with the standing orders, what you could do is to phrase it as a question.
I have questions.
You phrase your
I would like
statement in questions,
all right.
right?
I would like to know if the Prime Minister is aware that Eastern Hanover was badly hit by Melissa. It is a valid question.
Members, please allow.
My question.
Members, please allow the member from Hanover Eastern to ask her questions.
I don't want to be bullied, respectfully. I don't want to be bullied. It is important that I say what I'm saying. I have made efforts. I sent messages to Minister Charles. None of my messages were answered. However, this morning, representatives from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security are in Hanover. We have not received anything from government as yet. We have marooned communities. With regards to the Prime Minister's statement, nothing was mentioned about those marooned communities. Communities like Chigwell, where the water is rising. Communities like Forest, Chester Castle, Lethe, Cops, and earlier I received a message that persons are marooned in New Mills. So it is indeed important that before I get to my questions, I lay these facts down. My questions are, when can we expect food and medical relief for Eastern Hanover? When can we expect air relief to residents of Chester Castle and New Mills, and also in the Forest area where people are moving around on boats? Thank you.
Thank you, member. The member from St. Elizabeth Northeast.
Thank you.
Member, you turned your mic off and on again, and that is unlikely that the person sitting beside you is the next person in line. Hold on. You may have to move. The person next in line is the member from Portland East. Don't just yield. You can ask your question first, then the member from St. Elizabeth can come across to you. St. Elizabeth. St. Elizabeth Northeast. So don't turn your mic off.
I won't, Madam Speaker,
Thank
but
you.
chivalry is not dead. So if my friend will, thank you. I will yield.
So, member, in keeping with the standing orders, permission to speak from a seat other than your own.
Might I have permission to speak from a seat other than my own?
Yes, member.
Madam Speaker.
So, remember, member questions.
Very well, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member from Eastern Portland. My questions to the Prime Minister are as follows. Madam Speaker, I wonder whether there will be any consideration to offering or engaging shelter managers on a paid basis. And I ask that against the background of persons calling me on the day of the hurricane to ask if I could help to locate shelter managers because there was no way to access particular shelters in some of my constituency. I also ask it against the background of having visited shelters in Thornton and Quickstep, which were without resources, no bedding, etc. And there were no measures in place for persons who were actually coming in. I wonder if we perhaps engage shelter managers on a paid basis, if we might have a better outcome in terms of the future preparation for these types of natural disaster. My second question has to do with the issue of housing. Would the Prime Minister be in a position to indicate or provide a timeline for persons living in northeastern St. Elizabeth to expect when they can perhaps look forward to having a roof over their heads? And I understand the exigency of the situation, but I asked the question because up to this morning, a resident from Park Mountain asked me, she said that she knew that the situation is dire, but she wanted to know when we would be able to assist her to get a house for her 5 children. So I'm asking, can the Prime Minister provide or indicate a timeline that those residents who were affected can look forward to getting housing assistance? Third, the Prime Minister spoke about connectivity and Starlink communication. Will there be any consideration to providing such connectivity to communities in northeastern St. Elizabeth? And if the answer is yes, might we have a timeline for the provision of such services? And finally, Madam Speaker, I represent a constituency that is cut off in the interiors, in the hills, where there is the likelihood that power and energy will not resume anytime soon. Will there be any consideration to putting in place special measures to provide alternative form of energy to these communities that are cut off and are unlikely to be able to be restored to the JPS grid at any particular time in the near future? And I ask again, because it has come to my attention that there are specific generators that can actually power entire communities. So will the government be looking into providing any kind of relief by way of power connectivity to these communities which have been deeply affected? Thank you.
Thank you, Member. Members, remember, do not repeat yourself or repeat questions already asked. The next member is the member from, oh gosh, I forgot about you. Would you be so kind? Chivalry is not dead. However,
Madam Speaker, I will seek your permission to speak from a seat that is not my own.
And then turn over to.
Madam Speaker, I don't know if karma is alive in this room, but certainly one good deed I benefit from now. I'm seeking your permission under Standing Order 18 to set the context of my question. If not permitted, then I will move forward. But I know that you use it slavishly, and I just need an explanation so that the Prime Minister don't misinterpret anything I'm saying in good faith.
So, member, I have sat here. I have sat here, and persons have made every effort not to necessarily ask their questions, regardless of the rules of the House. Member, ask your question. The Standing Order also allows, if your questions are not properly answered, to be able to ask additional questions. And member, so I spent some time on Standing Order 18.
Very well.
The purpose for Standing Order 18, personal explanation, is not one that applies to Standing Order 17 as it relates to questions and answers to questions. After the House sitting is finished, I will assist you and any new member who would like to understand what Standing Orders 18 means to elucidate that for you. Member, go to your question and I will help you after.
Madam Speaker, I tried my best. Very well. Mr. Prime Minister, I have three questions for you. One, the context of equitable distribution. Portland Eastern sits in the east of the island, but there are communities that are marooned. And I heard in your statement, you made mention of the use of technology. And while we applaud that, technology sometimes cannot be a substitute for the lived human experience. So much so that in Portland Eastern, there are communities where all the roofs were blown off. And because it's not a parish that is labeled as affected areas, albeit there are places, as in different communities that were affected, because we are a coastal parish, as you understand. Will there be a committee set up to investigate the maroon areas so that they can be attended first in time, like the other areas that have already been designated as such? In keeping with the equitable distribution, if I am to if I am to continue with the theme of dealing with human dignity, Portland Eastern is now situated as the least among us, but the spirit of the Constitution speaks about protecting the rights of the least among us. Since those who are affected that are not a part of the classification of the catastrophe that my colleagues speak of in the name parishes, it is my question to you whether you will reconsider, because of geographical location, size of the constituency, whether or not an allocation can be reconsidered on a situation ethics basis. So much so that the allocation for water for Portland Eastern, and I don't see the minister in here now, the allocation for basic, he's engaged in conversation, but the allocation for even food. Prime Minister, I did the math. It's $195 million for care packages for the 39,000 persons on the voters list alone. Now, I'm raising that to you because the public is watching. I'm in no way suggesting that you give me $195 million to feed the constituents, but I'm not being political now. The reality is, in terms of food distribution, the 1.5 million would amount to about 300 care packages at $5,000. Realistically, Prime Minister, the question I'm asking to you is in terms of the equity in distribution to ensure that persons are given the basic amenities, the basic necessities in keeping with ensuring that persons aren't excluded from the distribution. I would have raised in another forum in terms of the impossibility of government to take on the distribution by itself. It's just a consideration so that the Minister of Social Security isn't put on the back end when he's doing his best, that one understands that whatever is communicated to the government is what the government can respond to in a crisis. So a consideration that we are an island, we were all affected, and whatever mechanism is used to find the areas so the least among us is not suffering, because we are guided by the Constitution. I'm just asking you to consider that. And the last but not least, in keeping with the teachings of Jesus and situation ethics, is that we are guided to understand that at a time like this, Prime Minister, we don't see color. We don't see the political lines. And if we would communicate that to the public, that we are united on that front, then certainly when it comes to distribution, one understands that the cries that I make for Portland Eastern is as equally where the areas that are suffering from the disaster and the devastation, that they also are seen. Thank you.
Don't turn the mic off, please. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, thank you for your indulgence.
Member from St. Andrew, Southwest, please come to the mic.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, just a couple of questions that I have. The first one, when the Prime Minister spoke about the housing solutions, I was wondering whether or not, Prime Minister, for whatever the solutions are, the issues around ownership that normally attend to housing solutions for government, if those will be waived so that it will become easier for persons to access. That's one. The second question.